The rescue helicopter swept over my ranch for the third pass, its massive rotors cutting through the thick Arizona desert air as the sun dipped behind the red stone ridges. Through my binoculars, I spotted the pilot waving sharply while speaking into his radio, clearly frustrated. And right there, planted smack in the center of my very clearly marked landing zone, stood Craig Dutton, arms folded, a laminated stop sign raised over his head, like he was commanding traffic on a preschool playground. He had arranged bright orange cones in a neat circle around himself, as if that flimsy formation could somehow halt a $40 million aircraft from touching down on property I own outright. The radio strapped to my belt hissed to life with the pilot's strained voice. "Sir, we have an individual on the ground claiming to represent some sort of neighborhood security agency. He says we're violating something he calls airspace tranquility regulations. I need this landing zone cleared ASAP. We are carrying the governor of Arizona for the wildfire assessment flight." Over. I watched Craig lift his bullhorn, the same one he'd purchased with HOA funds, despite 3 separate votes denying it, and began shouting up at the helicopter like he could outmatch the roar of the blades. "This is a violation of Sandstone Valley Estates HOA Ordinance 7.3.5. All aircraft must submit written approval forms 14 business days before landing. You are trespassing in a regulated community airspace." The helicopter looped overhead again, clearly irritated, and I saw someone in the rear cabin lean forward to speak to the pilot. Moments later, the radio crackled once more. "Sir, the governor wants you to know that if this individual is not removed from the landing zone within 2 minutes, she will personally see to it that he spends the night in county jail." She also included rather descriptive language I won't repeat on official channels. "Please advise." Over. My name is Reed Malloy, and at 51 years old, after 25 years as a search and rescue paramedic, I thought I had witnessed the entire spectrum of human chaos. I had hauled people out of flash floods, rappelled down cliff faces through thunderstorms, and once delivered twins in the back of a helicopter during a full-blown blizzard. But none of that, absolutely none of it, prepared me for life inside the Sandstone Valley Estates HOA or for its self-installed dungeon master. Craig Dutton moved into this gated development 3 years back, buying a 10-acre ranch on the eastern edge. The property came with a unique history and an even more unique legal easement. The previous owner, retired medevac pilot Bill Hawthorne, had secured a special provision when the community was built. Because of its strategic location and proximity to state forest land, my land was legally designated as an emergency landing site for rescue and wildfire aircraft. This wasn't a handshake agreement. It was filed with the county, recorded with the State Aviation Authority, and printed on every FAA flight map covering our region. Craig didn't care. In his universe, HOA rules outranked federal aviation law, state emergency protocols, and anything resembling logic. Craig, 63 years old, 5'6", in custom orthopedic shoes, always wearing mirrored aviators, even at our 7:00 p.m. indoor board meetings, had retired from a mall security job and somehow persuaded a previous HOA board to invent a new position just for him. Chief of Community Security. The wildfire crisis began 5 days earlier when lightning ignited a patch of dry brush 15 miles north of us. The blaze expanded to more than 3,000 acres. While the fire wasn't yet threatening our neighborhood, the state triggered emergency response procedures. My ranch, with its open clearing and quick access to the highway, was selected as a staging site for helicopter operations. I spent 2 days prepping the landing area, setting up a water station, and coordinating with the state fire marshal's office. Everything went smoothly until Craig decided to intervene. It started with an email at exactly 11:30 p.m., dripping with righteous indignation. "Mr. Malloy, I have been informed that you intend to allow aircraft to land on your property without proper HOA authorization. This violates community standards regarding noise, dust, and visual aesthetics. Cease immediately or face fines of up to $500 per day," I responded politely, attaching the legal easement, the emergency authorization from the state, and a reminder that obstructing emergency aircraft was a federal offense. His reply arrived 6 minutes later. Federal Schmederal. In Sandstone Valley Estates, I am the law. The next morning, I discovered that Craig had installed a chain link gate across my private dirt road overnight. A sign dangling from the center read "Authorized HOA Vehicles Only," accompanied by another proclaiming no airborne intrusions beyond this point. When I called to demand he remove it, he insisted the gate was for my protection. "We cannot allow unauthorized helicopters to disrupt residents' peace and tranquility," he said, with a tone so noble, it was almost impressive. "The sound of those rotors can decrease property values by up to 3%. According to a study I found online, I cut the lock off the gate with bolt cutters that afternoon. By sundown, Craig had replaced it. This went on 4 times in 2 days until I finally removed the entire gate, carried it to his driveway, and leaned it against his garage door with a note, 'Please keep your gate on your own property. Thank you.' And that brings us to today, Craig standing in the middle of my landing zone, shaking a stop sign at a helicopter carrying the governor of Arizona, 2 state fire officials, and a news crew from Channel 12. The situation had shifted from ridiculous to downright dangerous. The helicopter was low on fuel after 20 minutes of circling, and the pilot's tone was tightening with urgency. "Sir, we need to land immediately," he radioed. "We have approximately 15 minutes of fuel left, and the nearest alternate landing site is 25 minutes away. If this individual is not removed, we will have to declare an emergency." Over. I sprinted across the field toward Craig, who was now reading directly from his laminated HOA charter into the bullhorn. Article 9, Section 4 clearly states that all vehicles wheeled, tracked, or airborne must display a valid Sandstone Valley Estates parking permit. "This helicopter is not in compliance." "Craig," I said, forcing calm into my voice despite wanting to strangle the man, "you need to move. Right now. This is a state emergency operation. You are committing multiple felonies by stopping this helicopter from landing," I warned him. He angled his bullhorn toward me. "Reed Malloy, you violate HOA Ordinance 1.6, attempting to intimidate a community security officer during the performance of his sacred duties. I am issuing you a formal warning." Before I could respond, the distant wail of sirens cut through the desert wind. Within minutes, 3 vehicles rolled up to the landing zone: a state police cruiser, a fire department truck, and a black SUV with government plates. Tom Richardson, the state fire marshal I'd been coordinating with, stepped out of the SUV alongside a uniformed state trooper and a man in a dark suit I assumed was part of the governor's security team. "Mr. Dutton," Tom said, his voice carrying the weight of someone who had handled far worse emergencies than an HOA zealot with a laminated stop sign. "You have exactly 10 seconds to clear this landing zone before Deputy Morrison arrests you for interference with emergency operations, reckless endangerment, and at least 6 other charges I don't have the patience to name right now." Craig spun, brandishing his stop sign like a medieval weapon. "You have no authority here. This is private HOA territory, and I demand to see your guest pass. No one enters Sandstone Valley Estates without authorization from the board." Deputy Morrison, a tall, no-nonsense woman who looked violently allergic to stupidity, stepped forward, resting her hand firmly on her cuffs. "Sir, this is your final warning. Move away from the landing zone, now." Craig's face reddened behind his aviators. "This is a conspiracy. You're all involved. Reed Malloy has probably bribed you with his helicopter fortune. I will not be intimidated. The HOA Charter is the supreme law of this land. I answer to a higher authority than the state of Arizona." The helicopter was now dropping lower, preparing for an emergency landing. Whether Craig liked it or not, the downdraft kicked up dust, scattering Craig's carefully arranged traffic cones like they were cheap plastic toys. His comb-over, usually glued down with the quantity of hairspray that defied physics, was whipping wildly around his head like a frantic desert animal. Through the swirling dust, the helicopter door slid open. A woman in a tailored business suit leaned out, and even from 50 feet away, could see the expression on her face, a political death glare capable of ending careers and breaking the spirits of veteran legislators. "Governor Patricia?" Sandoval was not known for her patience, and Craig had just drained whatever tiny reserve she possessed. She lifted a phone and aimed it at him, clearly recording. Then she pulled out her own bullhorn because apparently that was the theme of the day, and her voice thundered across the clearing. "Mr. Dutton, I am Governor Patricia Sandoval, and you are currently being filmed for what will almost certainly become a viral video titled, HOA Guard Attempts to Arrest the Governor. You have 5 seconds to step aside, or I will personally ensure your place in Arizona history as its most spectacular fool." Instead of backing down, Craig actually stepped toward the helicopter and raised his stop sign higher. "I need to see your HOA guest pass. No exceptions, not even for government officials. Rules are rules." Deputy Morrison was done. She closed the distance in 3 strides, grabbed Craig's arm, spun him around, and snapped handcuffs onto his wrists. "Mr. Dutton, you are under arrest for interference with emergency operations, obstruction of government administration, and reckless endangerment," she said, practically shouting to compete with his non-stop ranting about HOA sovereignty and airspace purity. As she escorted him toward the SUV, Craig continued yelling, demanding to contact the HOA board immediately. "You'll all be banned from Sandstone Valley Estates. Every one of you. Your names will go on the permanent no-entry list." This is not over. With Craig finally removed, the helicopter touched down. Governor Sandoval stepped out, barely bothered by the dust. She approached me with a steady hand extended. "Mr. Malloy, I assume?" she said, with a small smile. "Thank you for your patience. I understand you've been dealing with this individual for some time." I shook her hand. "Governor, you have no idea. Last month, he tried to fine me for having too many clouds over my property. Claimed they violated the community's mandated sunshine allotment." She actually laughed. "Well, I think we can fix this permanently." She turned to Tom. "I want this ranch designated as an official critical emergency infrastructure site, full state protection, immune from any HOA regulation, restriction, or interference." Then she glanced toward the SUV where Craig sat fuming. "And make it clear that if Mr. Dutton comes within 500 feet of this landing zone again, he will be charged with trespassing on protected state land." Over the next hour, while the governor completed her wildfire assessment and the news crew filmed interviews, I learned just how deep the trouble ran for Craig. Interference with emergency operations alone carries up to 5 years in prison and a $25,000 fine. Obstruction of government administration added another possible 3 years and 15 grand. And reckless endangerment because he forced a low-fuel helicopter carrying multiple passengers to circle unnecessarily could tack on another 2 years. Tom pulled me aside as everyone packed up. "The county prosecutor isn't messing around," he said. "Craig put lives at risk and obstructed wildfire mitigation. He's facing serious time, even with a plea deal. If he doesn't take one, he'll serve at least 6 months guaranteed." The following morning, an emergency HOA board meeting was held. I showed up along with 70 residents who had heard about the debacle from the news or from the video now viral titled exactly as the governor predicted. Harold Blackstone, our board president and a retired judge, opened with a weary sigh. "As you all know, yesterday's incident has brought significant negative attention to our community," he began. "After consulting with legal counsel, the board has voted unanimously to terminate Craig Dutton as Chief of Community Security, effective immediately. Furthermore, the position is being dissolved entirely. From now on, we will rely on the Sheriff's Department for actual security matters." Someone shouted from the back. "What about all his ridiculous rules? The cloud fines? The bird watching permits? The millimeter grass inspections?" Harold nodded. "All citations and fines issued by Mr. Dutton over the past 18 months are void. Any money collected will be refunded. We are also conducting a full review of our bylaws to eliminate any regulations exceeding reasonable community standards." 2 weeks later, a package arrived from the governor's office. Inside was an official certificate designating my property as the Malloy Ranch Emergency Response Zone, granting it legal protections that essentially made HOA interference illegal. A handwritten note accompanied it. "Mr. Malloy, thank you for your service to our state. Next time I land a helicopter, I'll make sure to bring my HOA guest pass." She added a smiley face. I genuinely laughed. 3 months later came Craig's trial. Having refused all plea deals, he chose to represent himself, arguing loudly that HOA law superseded state and federal authority. Predictably, it went terribly. The judge, barely maintaining composure through his opening statement, finally warned him that sovereign citizen arguments would not be tolerated in her courtroom. The jury deliberated for exactly 47 minutes, guilty on all counts. The judge, either merciful or simply eager to end the spectacle, sentenced him to 18 months in minimum security prison, 3 years of probation, and $40,000 in fines. As the bailiff escorted him out, Craig shouted to the gallery, "The HOA will rise again. You cannot stop the enforcement of properly submitted community guidelines." His wife filed for divorce the very next day, citing irreparable embarrassment and the fact that Craig was already trying to form an HOA inside his prison cell block.